We did this research also with one other colleague, John McDonald, who wasn't able to make it here today. John is in between jobs and will be announcing his new job soon, I'm sure. We spent the last John and Jason and I have spent the last several years doing a variety of research projects that are all about discovery of journal articles. So discovery through library discovery services, discovery on the open web. And this particular project was about the idea of finding free stuff, broadly defined. So open access, rogue, pirated, whatever. If you are a student or a scholar and you go into Google and you're not at your institution, what do you find? And from a student perspective, from a researcher perspective, they probably don't care, right? Whether it's a version that they're getting through the library or getting some other way. They just want to get that article. So really the question is how easy is it to find articles on the web if you just start searching? We all know about Sci-Hub, and we have a bunch of slides that we've used, but this is the one that to me is the most impactful. This is from the Science article, the Bohannon article, and the survey of 11,000 researchers, and 88% of them don't think it's wrong to download pirated papers. That's staggering and shocking and upsetting. The other thing that we pulled out of this survey is that 23% of those who responded said that the reason that they use Sci-Hub is that they object to the profits of academics, or profits off of academics, sorry, and then 17% because of convenience. In other words, we have it in my library, but it's easier to go to Sci-Hub, right? There are some other things from the study, including the logs of where people are coming from that show that many people are coming into Sci-Hub from universities. So it's clear that it's an issue of convenience for many people. It's also an issue of thinking that publishing is somehow not legitimate. Publishing is somehow not a good thing, something to compete against. And that's concerning for everybody in this room, I'm sure. So we did our study, we looked at 300 articles. These are articles that are indexed in Scopus. We were starting with articles that we believe to be legitimate scholarly articles. These are not from predatory publishers. These are from mainstream publishers. We found 300 articles, a random sample of articles published in 2015. We picked 100 from arts and humanities publications, 100 from social sciences, 100 from life sciences. They were selected from between 2,000 and 4,000 English language records. We tested these in the fall of 2016, searching them in a variety of places, and I'll talk about where we searched them in a moment. So they were articles published in 2015. We searched them in roughly September, October of 2016, so a year or more after they were published. As we talk through this, I just want to give a few definitions because I think it's important to understand what we're talking about here. When we talk about availability, we are talking about the ability to get to that article in 3 clicks or less to a free version of that article, right? So we found many more of these. We found them indexed in various places, but if you couldn't get to the full text, we didn't consider it to be available. And we arbitrarily chose 3 clicks. We could have chosen 4, but we chose 3. We looked at the article source and we talked about different categories of freeness or openness. Gold open access, this is open access on the publisher's website by our definition, right? So again, this is stuff that we can get to freely. If it's on the publisher's website, we're assuming it's gold open access. Green open access in our definition is open access on a repository or an author website. Rogue open access is open access or an open, freely available article on academia.edu or ResearchGate or some other academic social network. I think it's important to note here that these might be green or gold as well. They're not necessarily rogue. They're not necessarily illegitimate, but we know that some of the things that are in ResearchGate and academia.edu should not be there. And then finally, pirated, which is Sci-Hub. So we searched Sci-Hub, and we found articles there as well. Again, with Sci-Hub, some of those are open, legitimately open articles. Some of them, many of them, are not. We searched these first in Google Scholar. So we started our searching in Google Scholar. We searched on the title of the article. We then searched in Google. We searched in ResearchGate if we had not found that article already in ResearchGate through Google and Google Scholar. And then we searched Sci-Hub. And then we logged all of those results. So I'll talk us through the article source. So whether it's gold, green, rogue, or pirated. So here's that availability by source.
Center button.
Center button, thank you. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's it. It just might not show.
It's just not showing. All right. I'll talk about it, not point. So this is, we've got 4 clusters here. The first is all of the articles, all 300 articles. The next set is the arts and humanities. The next set is the social sciences. And the final set is the life sciences. There were 300 articles in total, 100 in each of those categories. So that's the light gray bar. The next bar over, the roughly gold bar, or sorry, the orange bar is all of these open versions combined, not including the pirated, right? So all told, you can find about 166 of these 300 articles in some open version, including rogue, right? And that's important to note, right? Including not necessarily legitimately open. There are 80 of them in gold, 59 of them in green. Some of these are in multiple categories. And then 111 of them in rogue out of the 300. You can see the breakdown by discipline. There's some variation, but not a lot. And then there's the Sci-Hub. 260 of them were available. 86 of the arts and humanities, 87 of the social sciences, 87 of the life sciences. So almost all of these articles are available right over almost 90% of these articles are available in Sci-Hub. So let's break it down a little bit more. This is just the by discipline. Again, 55% were available in some open form, and we're counting that rogue open access here, the ResearchGate and academia.edu. There is variation, fewer in the arts and humanities, more in social sciences and life sciences. And then Sci-Hub, again, just to hammer it home, 86 and 87, 86 in arts and humanities and 87 in social sciences and life sciences. Give you time for the picture. Everybody got the picture? Okay. This is a slightly different version of looking at the same data. So this is, if you start thinking that the ideal is gold, right? The most legitimate is the version on the publisher page. 80 of them, if we start with that, 80 of them, because again, on the previous slides we showed that there could be an article that was available in 1 or 2 or 3 different versions for the same article. But if we start with gold, 80 of them were available in gold, 23 in arts and humanities, 25 in social sciences, 32 in life sciences. If we start to add, you get 24 more in green, but not available in gold. So there were 24 of these that were not available in gold, but they were in green. So we're up to a little over 100. add in 59 more that were rogue, but not gold or green. So these are the ones that are in ResearchGate, and that was the only place we found them. We didn't find a gold version or a green version, but we found a version in ResearchGate or academia.edu. And then 115 more in Sci-Hub. And then 22 of them that we didn't find any version that was freely available. But only 22 out of these 300, and that is disturbing to me, and I think probably to all of us. And Jason's now going to talk about same results, but by where we searched.
Okay, so the orange bar should look familiar. This is the same data. The total open access articles are there for reference. But here, instead of looking at where the article was hosted or in what version the article was hosted, we're looking at where it was found. So if you look in Google Scholar, the blue bars, you find roughly a third or more than a third of the articles available there, freely available there. Google had the same number, although the match wasn't exactly the same. There were different articles in each. And then in ResearchGate overall, you're down to a little less than a third. If you just went and searched ResearchGate, you would find about a third of these articles available there. And you can see, although there's very little variation across the disciplines, arts and humanities are less well covered in ResearchGate, that 11 down there, a little more in academia.edu, but because you cannot search academia.edu directly, you can only get to those articles through Google Scholar search engines. There's no bar to represent that. And of course, Sci-Hub is the same because both the source and the search location are identical, so here the numbers are the same. So looking at that same additive approach, but thinking about the search location, if you start in Google Scholar, and we assumed in this case that folks did, you're going to find roughly 40% of the articles that out of a random sample of 300 freely available from Google Scholar. If you then move to Google and look for the articles that weren't in Google Scholar, you add another up to maybe 10% of the total number of articles. Then if you move to ResearchGate and look for those articles that you haven't yet found progressing through, you don't add much. You add very little. That's because a lot of what's in ResearchGate is covered very well and linked to very well from Google Scholar and Google. And then the Sci-Hub completion is the same. So this is what you do if it's Google Scholar first. But now if we switch and do ResearchGate first, because what about folks that might start there? What does it look like? And here's the whole thing laid out, and you can see that ResearchGate is less comprehensive than Google Scholar. So when you switch from ResearchGate to Google Scholar, it adds a measurable amount of content there. So just sort of thinking about it from both starting places. So in conclusion, starting with Google Scholar, supplemented by Google, is a slightly better strategy than starting with ResearchGate. If you are someone who doesn't have site license access to any of this content, if you're out there on your own on the web without that, this is the way that you would find the most legitimate or at least quasi-legitimate freely available content. Then, however, starting with Sci-Hub and bypassing all of the legitimate search options entirely pretty much doubles the content that you can get to freely available. It's quick, it's easy, you get right there, and ultimately libraries and publishers should be concerned about that. We can talk a little bit more of that in the Q&A in a minute if you like. But, and then there's sort of a summary of the proportion of published articles out of the 300 randomly sampled from across the disciplines. About 26% or a quarter were available in a gold open access form, about 1/5, 20% available in a green and repository type form, a little more than a third available on these scholarly sharing type sites of ResearchGate and academia.edu. And of course, the pirated sites are much more. And this number is actually a little low if you looked at large publishers. We were across the board in this study, and so it was a big range. And we found that the majority of times when we couldn't find an article on Sci-Hub, it was from a smaller publisher where Sci-Hub had less ability to enable access for its users. So there you have it. We'll take questions. Oh, that's right. Okay, so he's reminded me. So one of the things that we are concerned about is if Sci-Hub is the quickest, easiest way for researchers to get content, that's not good news for the rest of us, for those of us who are in the purchasing and producing side of scholarly communication. And so the next step we wanted to ask is how well are libraries providing access to this freely available content? So this is a teaser from kind of the next project where we took just open access articles. So you have to reframe. Just looking at a set of open articles identified as open access, 97% available through Google Scholar. But then across the x-axis here is library size. And we found that of the small libraries who maybe would need access the most, they left 50% of that open access content unlinked to through their discovery systems. And primarily, it was not that it wasn't in the discovery system, but that the discovery system did not get them to a freely available version, even though we have confirmed that it exists. As you go up in scale, or in terms of size of libraries leave a lot less of that open access content unlinked, but that's not necessarily because they are doing a better job of linking to open access content, but it is because they are much more likely to have a site license that would give them access to that content. And I should mention that this is actually major publishers. Because we also wanted to look at hybrid and fully OA journals, we ended up with a sample of major publishers, so that changes it a bit too. But libraries aren't doing as well as they could and should and would be linking to this freely available content through their systems either. So again, why are the researchers going to come to us and use our tools if they can't find stuff that's freely available that they do find out there on the web and in other places?
And now questions.
On that last point, do you think unpaywall has or will change that?
So unpaywall is one of a few systems out there that are beginning to improve the ease of identifying freely available articles. And I think the question is, can libraries working through or with unpaywall and their systems use those to dramatically improve library-based access to open articles? And the answer is, I certainly hope so. So, I mean, is also open OA DOI. There is also major publisher initiatives to allow you to send a DOI and find out, do I have access to this, just like that. Our link resolver systems are systems that get us from the result in the discovery tool to the actual content, have to do a better job, a much better job. And it looks like the technology is there kind of on both sides, and we are maybe soon to see a revolution, I hope, in access to this open content, effective access to it, instead of missing an awful lot of it. Any other questions? We've left you stunned by the data too early in the morning. Yes?
Do you want me to come up, or yeah, could you speak into the mic?
Hi. My name's Cameron. I work for Annual Reviews, which is a nonprofit publisher in Palo Alto. I'm also doing my doctorate at Stanford, looking at kind of open access models. So one of the data points you mentioned earlier on, which was from the Bohannon study about how researchers, even at major institutions, are choosing Sci-Hub over the library because of convenience is something that we consider a big problem, right? Obviously, if patrons at a subscribing institution are getting access to the full text from somewhere else, that's usage that we're not seeing, that's usage data that the library isn't generating. It makes it difficult for them to, if they're doing usage-based evaluation of renewals, it kind of presents a problem. But I think what it suggests is that even at a place like Stanford, if I'm using Google Scholar, sure, we have our link resolver link, which comes up to the right in Google Scholar, and I click on that, but it's still probably going to be 2 or 3 clicks for me to get to the full text. So we worked with Google Scholar, and sure a lot of other publishers have done this, to implement subscriber links. And what that essentially did was to change the link on the right. Because for some of our articles, it would link, as Google decided to do a couple years ago, to whatever free version of the article was available. And that was even on campus. Having participated in subscriber links, the link that they now see is HTML from annual reviews. We implemented that in the beginning of 2016, and across all of our subscribing institutions, we saw a 24% increase in usage over the previous year. So that was like one small thing that we did, which really kind of helped direct library users to our content and the final version, which is something that we want.
Yeah, and I think it's an example of another reason that this is so important. So I kind of have 2 quick thoughts. One is both Google Scholar and Sci-Hub now have plugins that allow you to search directly in Google Scholar or Sci-Hub. You can actually search the Google Scholar interface and end up at the Sci-Hub article. So that is a rogue plugin. You can't install it via Chrome unless you go into developer mode, but it's out there. You can test it. It exists. Google Scholar has a plugin that is there in Chrome. You go in and there's a blue button. You click it with whatever's on the page, and it's going to pop you up a green button right there in front of you, just like that, if there is a freely available version. And that quick, easy approach is where we have to go somehow, whether it's the subscriber links on the side or whatever it might be. I think that's important. And it brings up, to my mind, how I've seen some major publishers beginning to respond to Sci-Hub, which is to begin a discussion about moving away from IP-based authentication, right? This could be good. It could also be really bad, because if it makes it harder for users to get to content through our systems, it's going to push them even further out there in the other world. And so we need to tread lightly with that. That is on the radar of some libraries, not a lot of them, but I think it is a huge question going forward that this conversation ought to be in the context of, I guess. So.
Well, thank you very much.